Hi guys, how's the energy in the room? Is everybody falling asleep, or do we actually have something going? Uh, yeah, well, welcome to this talk on free as in, well, actually, it's about resisting fascism with open source. And I figured they're not going to pull me off stage by changing that at the last minute, but it's in line with the proposal I made. I'm really happy to be back in Brazil, in Brasilia. I was here 11 years ago. I even broke my teeth when the late Jean Ferry he fed me candy sugar, and then that broke my teeth. So I got to experience the excellent healthcare system here. I hope to not repeat that experience this time. I almost did not come this year because I'm suffering from flight shame, and it's quite a flight. And then I was like, okay, I need to stay 6 weeks, and then I'm like, that's too long. But okay, in the end, I came because I just love to travel. I just hate what it's doing to the world. You don't have it on the screen. On the screen. You need to tell me because I don't know what you need. So we have the display configuration. So which display do we need to change? This one? Well, no, what are you taking? Oh, this is 1024. You need that to be full HD? Yes. Okay. Well, that was the technical intermezzo, which always needs to happen. Like I said, almost did not come because we are in deep trouble as a species. We're heading off a cliff, and many species are heading off a cliff, and that's planetary. And then if we zoom in, we have financial crisis, we have political crisis. A lot of shit is going down. And the question is, what can we do about that? And last summer, I was on holiday in Norway and reflecting on these questions and the role that open source has to play for that for me. When the CrowdStrike IT outage hit, in case people forgot, it was the biggest IT outage in history. 8.5 million Windows computers went down. They went down for days. It took down airports, hospitals, airlines, whatever. It was the largest computer outage ever, like I said. And the details about how this could have happened are quite amazing and shocking. It was a classic C buffer overflow, which was not properly automated tested. Then it was also not manually tested. But then they rolled that out worldwide on a single button press. There were no contingency plans for critical infrastructures. And all of that is running in ring zero. And then I'm like, what the, how the hell can something like that happen? Who does that? But apparently, industry leader Microsoft is fine with that state of affairs, and they allowed that to happen in their way. It is, yes. Okay, well, maybe it reverted because I didn't confirm after. So my internal projects have better QA than that, and maybe that's why I don't make the kind of money. But jokes aside, it made me realize that there's something that we have that we tend to take for granted, but which is really special. As an open source community, we have such high standards of engineering, of linters, of continuous integration, you name it, and we just swim in the water. It's self-evident for us, but apparently that's not the way it's done everywhere. So open source in general, and Plone specifically, has these high standards, and of course also non-open source projects have those standards as well. But I guess they're kind of like emulating the open source ethos there. So open source is leading in many respects in regards of this technical excellence. And beyond the technology we create, the way we do that is a beacon of hope in these dark times. Because this talk grew out of that realization that what we do in open source actually is meaningful beyond the technology. The way we organize bottom up, the way we make stuff happen as a community, that's something special. And I think we tend to think like the Calimera complex, like we're so small, we're unfunded, but actually we're doing a lot of stuff pretty well. And I'm going to go deeper into that. So this talk attempts to answer the question I've been wrestling with for several years now, which is, why should I even code? What's the point of writing software when the world is going to pieces? So how do I contribute? I'm staring at a screen. So how does that fix the climate catastrophe? So what is my contribution there? And I've held that question for several years and thinking about that. So this talk basically is, a piece of the puzzle for me in answering that. It's not a definitive answer, but it provides maybe, some directions about how we can handle that. So what I will cover in this talk is, first of all, a short history of the internet revolution and the darkness that it spawned. Then a quick intro into Quave, what it is, and it's been what I've been spending my past decade on of my working life. Then I'll dive deeper into how do complex systems work, and can we articulate a theory of change for complex systems? I'll zoom that in on a case study of what IMEO is doing in Belgium. And then I'll zoom back out again and make some general conclusions about how this line of thinking applies to the work we do and change in the world. So first, a short history of technology. As we all know, Silicon Valley is the center of the known universe. It has a particular flavor of the American dream there, which consists of computers solving everything and everybody living happily thereafter. So let's dive into what has happened there. So this started out as a kind of crazy crossover between nerdy geeks and bearded counterculture. They created on the tunes of surf music, they created the Berkeley software distribution, which is the UR Linux, the UR Unix. It spawned every software that we now have in our pockets in terms of networking stack, for example. And those were happy days. But then fast forward half a century, and what do we get? Software has eaten the world. The world's richest man is a tech executive. He smokes a joint on air with the most popular right-wing YouTuber. What the hell is happening here? They're part of a tidal wave of disinformation that propels, Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States again. So this may well be the end of democracy. And how did it get to this state of affairs? What has happened? I guess you guys know that the internet started out as the ARPANET in the 1960s when they invented packet switching to be robust against Russian attacks, even like city killer hydrogen bombs, except they did not know about Russian disinformation attacks back then. Fast forward to the 90s when we had Web 1.0, the internet was open for commercial interests, the web had been invented. Those were happy days. I drank the Kool-Aid, I got in there, built websites, bought Wired magazine, and bought into this utopia of, oh, this is great technology to make the world a better place. Now, the key mechanism underpinning this dynamic of this web bubble or the internet revolution is network effects. John Metcalfe, he was an engineer that invented the Ethernet, and he articulated Metcalfe's law, which says that network value grows exponential with the number of participants, while the cost remains equal in terms of per participant. So what it means is if you have like two phones, it's not very useful. If you have one phone, it's not very useful. You can talk to yourself. If you have two phones, you have one connection. But the moment you scale it up to 12 phones, you already have 66 connections, because not only can you call everybody else can also call everybody else. So each participant new participant adds value for all the other existing participants, which means that the value increases quadratically, but the cost for a new phone just remains constant. And the upshot of that is, long story short, networks are natural monopolies, winner takes all. So the value created in the biggest network is so much bigger than the value created in the second biggest network, that the biggest network will eat all its competitors for lunch, and you will end up with just one monopolist. Why is that relevant? Well, we were about to find out. Benoit Mandelbrot is a mathematician who was very involved in fractals, And he wrote a book in 2000. Well, his math grew out of studying the financial system. He started doing that, I think, back in the 60s already. And what he saw was very concerning, because he saw that the way financial systems behave, the way that markets behave, is quite different from the way it's assumed to behave. It's much less stable. It's much more chaotic. And he wrote a book about that in 2004, which got mostly ignored. But then, later we found out that this was very relevant. And the reason why it's relevant is because this network dynamics that I just described, it moves us from linear connections to exponential connections. And our minds are not well equipped to handle exponential connections. As humans, we find it much easier to think in linear terms. What it also means is that statistical distributions, they shift from the Gaussian distribution, the bell curve that you see on the left, which is like what ruled the society like for most of 20th century. It shifts to the long tail curve that you see on the right. And long tail is a funny term. You may think about a monkey, and that's funny. But actually what long tail means is that there's a few people getting obscenely rich. It means that the middle class, which in a bell curve society would be like most people, but the middle curve gets squashed in a power law society. And you get like a very large number of people who don't get very rich, they get very poor instead. And long curve also means that we have this long tail of improbable events with high impact, which we now see all the time in the news in terms of climate catastrophes. So that kind of stuff happens also in networked connections. And what it also means is that big banks who before 2008, they modeled their risk models based on Gaussian curve, on normal curves, when they were operating in a power law world. They underestimated the long tail risks that were involved in their financial constructs, and it crashed the financial system completely in 2008. And we all paid the price for that. By then, Web 2.0 was in full swing. And if you remember, Web 2.0 was the shift from the read-only web to the read-write web, where people could start talking back. It's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's LinkedIn, it's all of these social media that we all use every day nowadays. And that's what us geeks had been so proudly building for decades, right? That's what we were in this business for. At least I'm in the business for empowering people and doing that and giving people a voice. And we thought that would change the world. And we saw like Occupy Wall Street, and we were going to tax the rich and fix this problem. And we saw in Tunisia and in other places, we saw the Arab Spring. And it was the idea of the Twitter revolution, like Twitter is going to topple dictators. And we actually believe that stuff. But it's not how it worked out, right? You've had your own nightmare here with Bolsonaro, and you chased him out, thank God. And now, there's recently been published that how close to a coup you were. We had Trump in the States in 2016, and now he's back. We had the English, the British shooting themselves in the foot with the Brexit. And on top of that, we had COVID, which, is not just a disease of the lungs. I sometimes think it's maybe also a disease of the mind, because so many people fell into like far-right disinformation holes there. And that disinformation, which dominates like all these outcomes, has been facilitated by disinformation campaigns, and it's been disseminated in social networks via the very technology that we've been building. Post-truth is pre-fascism. That's what Timothy Snyder, historian, wrote in 2017 after the first Trump election. And I've studied fascism all my life, and I think a lot of people are underestimating the gravity of the situation that we're currently in worldwide. And you should go and read on tyranny. It's a very thin book. It's very clearly written. It's easy to read, and it's shocking. It's quite mind-blowing to read all of that. We're in a dark situation, and it's not getting better, right? We have Gen AI, ChatGPT, and stuff like that. NVIDIA has surpassed Apple as the most valuable company. So the amount of disinformation we're seeing now is nothing compared to the tidal wave of disinformation facilitated by AI that's about to hit us. People are already talking about the end of the web, because there will be so much generated bullshit out there that your blog will not be found anymore. It's the crap that takes, it's the ancientification that takes the overhand. Timnit Gebru is a AI researcher, was an AI researcher at Google until she got fired, who worked at the ethics department there. And together with a philosopher, Emil P. Torres, she coined the term TESCREAL. And TESCREAL describes a bundle of ideologies that are highly held in Silicon Valley, that are quite leading in a way. And they frame it as like, this is actually just eugenics, as in like what the Nazis practice. Because if you look into what TESCREAL means, we have transhumanism, we have extropianism, which is all about engineering better humans. Well, if you're engineering better humans, what does it make you and me? I mean, a not so good human, right? And what do you do with those if you want to have efficiency in society? And then we have singularitarianism, which was proposed, of which Ray Kurzweil, which you see on the screen, is a big proponent, which means that we have this exponential age and we will upload our brains to the cloud and stuff like that, and computers will take over. And the other concepts are also basically about treating poverty and existential risks as engineering problems that can be solved with technology. And all of that amounts to a kind of authoritarian technocracy. It's like, it's a techno-optimism. And meanwhile, some of the main proponents of that ideology are in jail for massive fraud, or they're openly supporting fascism in the United States. And so we're looking at an oligarchy of tech bros that are spewing disinformation and that are, promoting authoritarian solutions to problems that were in no small part created by the same technology that made them rich in the first place. How disappointing. I had higher hopes. And I feel stupid and guilty for buying into this hype, the science fiction for so long. But I did not sign up for this dystopia. I've pushed for very different outcomes in my career and in my life. I obtained a master in business administration with a specialization in environmental economics. I've been in open source web development and DevOps for all my career, for decades now. I'm a board member of the Plone Foundation, and I'm the founder of Quave. And you can see my social handle on the right. And apart from the stuff listed here, I've been a founder and board member of several, offline non-for-profits as well. And the key thread that connects like my life's work is to push for self-sufficiency and autonomy, like to strengthen people's power to rule their own lives. Back in 2013, I wrote a book, Systems of Intent, which was a digital workplace roadmap. I'd been studying knowledge management for several years, and I saw the possibilities of actually implementing that on top of Plone to enable a shift in organizations. So if you take Plone as a technology, which I've been using for a decade by then, and you add this knowledge management theory, then what you get is Quave, which is the product I founded. Let me quickly show you a bit like what Quave is, to give you some context of where I'm coming from. So Quave is a social internet platform. It's also a document collaboration platform. It's also a community platform. It's also a knowledge management platform. It's all of that. And it's basically a suite of more than a dozen applications which are closely integrated on top of Plone. The first thing you notice when you open Quave is the activity stream, which shows you the pulse of the organization. Everything in Quave, like all documents, all workspaces, also the global space, has conversations enabled. And you will see all the conversations that you have access to aggregated into a single stream. So you can dive in and see what's going on. Workspaces are, like the name says, the places where work gets done. Quave a workspace is a security zone that combines a team of people with the documents and tasks that these people are working on. We're extending collective.workspace, which in itself, again, extends the excellent role-based access control that we have in Plone. And as a user, you don't care about those technical concepts. What you get is intuitive security. A workspace, we treat it as a single trust zone. If you're in there, you basically have the same rights that everybody else has. All of that is great for bottom-up organizing, but organizations also need top-down communications, and that's where the news magazine comes in. It's a great way for internal communications to disseminate messages that need to reach the whole organization. You can also segment it by target group, and you can all even like invite external collaborators and approve their contributions in the workflow. Quave is comprised of many more applications. All of those get surface on the dashboard. which shows you what's going on and gives you access to all your information. We ship with 2 pre-configured dashboards, one for community interactions, one for getting stuff done. But you can also, as a user, always configure your own personal dashboard the way you want it to be. I won't bore you with going into all the other apps. We have we got you covered. This is the team currently working on Quave. Most of us have been working on Quave for years. Okay. 5 minutes. I thought I had a 40-minute slot. Apparently, I have a 20-minute slot. Okay, let's see how we do that. Really? Yeah, do we need to cut short? Because I really have a 40-minute talk. Yeah, okay. I'll just continue as if I didn't hear anything because I'm getting nervous. Yeah. So the reason I'm telling you that is that we created Quave to enhance humanity's collective intelligence using open technology. Quave helps organizations and communities to self-organize and manage knowledge. And the purpose of Quave is to facilitate a bottom-up shift in organizations from top-down organizing to bottom-up organizing. I'll just speed up a bit. And those are all lofty ambitions, but as I've already shown, technology has taken a dark turn. And like I said, I've been wrestling with Quave is based on social media networking to do organizational change. But then if you scale that up to societies, you get societal disruption facilitated by social media disinformation. These concepts are quite close to each other. And it made me wonder, is our technology on the dark side? Are we actually the bad guys building this stuff? And we've looked at Metcalfe's law and how the mathematics of networks basically already encode this winner-takes-all outcome. And I just wonder, okay, so if that's built into the technology, isn't the technology itself tainted? And that's a pretty depressing thought to have. But I'm starting to reach a different conclusion, which is that it's not the technology itself that is to blame, but the capitalism that this technology is embedded in. Sure, the technology has these network effects. It has this winner-take-all built in, but it also is empowering and it also can facilitate very different outcomes. And also, the underlying math is not just about centralization. It also shows how very different outcomes can be obtained. The math tells us that resistance is not futile. And I will not go into math. It's not my forte anyway. But let's look a bit at the high overview level. So this entails a paradigm shift. For centuries, we've operated in a mechanical paradigm, a mechanical universe, a clockwork universe where everything was caused. We had cause and effect. We could calculate the relationship between the two, and it gave us engineering and it gave us great wealth. And the beginning of the 20th century saw Einstein's general relativity theory, and we've seen quantum mechanics, which started to make a dent in that worldview. And then in 1961, something really interesting was discovered. Lorentz was studying models, computer models of weather patterns. And I'd like to flag how relevant that is for us working with computers, and given the climate catastrophe that we're in, that it was this confluence of interests. And they wanted to redo a simulation run, but instead of redoing the whole run, which was costly, they wanted to step in between and just start halfway to reconstruct their final outcomes. So they took a printout of a previous run and they inputted the data from the printout. And to their surprise, the outcome was wildly different from the original run. And they were scratching their head, how can this be? In the old worldview, that cannot be. You input the data, you get the same outcome. And what they found is that the printout was on a 3-digit precision when the computer internally used a 6-digit precision. And still, that's 1,000 versus 1 millionth. That couldn't make the difference, but it did. And that effect is known as the butterfly effect. And I guess you've heard of that. It's this idea of a single butterfly in the Amazon flapping its wings. It can cause a hurricane in Texas 1 week later. So small disturbances can have huge outcome effects. Beyond chaos theory, it then evolved into complexity science, because chaos is just chaotic, but complexity is miraculous. It's like you and I, we're all complex systems, and we're a miracle for not falling apart or not keeling over. We are stable in some sense. So complex systems, complex adaptive systems, they are goal-seeking, they are self-stabilizing, they are autopoietic. And what this means philosophically is that we see a paradigm shift from a clockwork, dead universe, from a mechanic universe, to a universe that is alive, that is dynamic, that is pulsating. Right? Reality itself is alive. And nowhere does this place, nowhere does this show up more beautifully than in emergence. So emergence is when ants with a very simple program, go left, go right, they interact in ways that at the colony level create purposeful behavior, find food. And emergence is when starlings with a very simple behavioral pattern of keeping distance, as a flock, generate the most amazing forms. So emergence is that at a higher level of scale, something happens that you cannot easily explain from the lower level program of the constituent parts. So in other words, the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. And emergence, is also a way of nature proving to us that reality is alive and much milder than we thought. If you go online and search for the term resist fascism, one of the top hits you will find is this book, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. She's an activist in Chicago, and she articulated many of these ideas that I just touched on in terms of complexity science. She translated those into a theory of change, into social activism. And she argues that we should be adaptive and embrace the fact that change never stops. She highlights how reality is fractal and small-scale changes can propagate up to the bigger scales. And she emphasizes how trust is critical. And we should not think as a venture capitalist and just scale relentlessly. We should scale slowly and scale relationally based on trust between people. And if you think about those points, that's exactly how we organize in open source. So thinking about that is actually what propelled me to give this talk. Is this realization that my personal core values and the way we try to implement those in Quave are equal to like the values that a lot of the values that we share as open source communities, and that these values are very suitable to navigating very complex landscapes and trying to move for change there. So let me outline 4 principles that I found for myself there. So first of all, it's local autonomy. It means we fully understand and control the technology stacks that we're using with. It's not a black box that we're working with. And it means that we're digitally sovereign. We are not dependent on any external corporation to solve stuff for us or to have a finger in our technology. Moreover, we strive for technological excellence, which is a key facilitator to winning clients. We need to compete with the other stuff, and on top of that, our stuff needs to be secure so that we can offer privacy and actually retain autonomy. Networked agility is really part of the cultural DNA of open source. Is the way we collaborate fluidly in a community like the Prone community, in varying settings and varying connections. And we routinely coordinate in teams that are geographically dispersed and culturally diverse. And finally, community sharing means that we have independent funding and we rely on synergies between each other. And we know how crucial it is to be part of a vibrant ecosystem. I think that's part of the reason why we're here in this room now, is to celebrate that. So if you put these 4 together, that's exactly how you navigate complexity in a dynamically changing environment. It's exactly what is needed to resist domination and forge your own independent path. And open source communities pioneer these values and found ways, and processes of implementing those, and we should be proud of that. Some of our clients buy Quave because it's GPL licensed, but most, I guess, don't really care. But in reflecting on this, I realized, but they do care about these values. They may not be interested in the license on our source code, but they are interested in autonomy, in sovereignty, in technological excellence, in flexibility, in community. But and embracing these values also provides a path into changing the world. Let's see how that works out in practice. Have any of you heard of the graphic novels of Asterix and Obelix. Yeah. So that they start all start out the same. The year is 50 before Christ. The whole of Gaul is dominated by the Romans. Everybody's subjected except, oh, hang on, not everybody is dominated. There's a small village holding out there. Yeah, fast forward to the present day, and there's this corner of Europe where a small tribe is holding out against the dominance of the big empire. And that corner is French-speaking Belgium, which is half of one country that's actually two countries. Well, it's complicated, but the bottom line is these people are not easily ruled. They're fiercely autonomous. And in this area, IMEO, who I'm working with, they serve more than 85% of the local municipalities, of the local government authorities. And as you can see in this image, they are literally all over the map. Joël Lambelot, he used to be a systems administrator at such a municipality, and he got together with other sysadmins, and they started to talk, and they shared a beer. And out of that evolved IMEO into a shared service center that now employs 50 employees in Belgium. They won an award from the European Commission for their sharing efforts, and they donated 10,000 euros to the Plone Foundation, because Plone is IMEO's secret weapon. IMEO has an application portfolio of 8 applications that are providing, of which Quave is one. And all except 1 or 2 of those applications are Plone-based. And IMEO's e-government is a big success for Plone. And you may perhaps realize how similar this is to the talk we saw previously about the interledgers. Even the map, the clickable map is the same there. So it's the same approach to e-government there based on Plone. So and I'll make this quick given the time, let's take a closer look at what was needed to make Quave, a possibility at IMEO. We had to align on several axes. First of all, we had to find business model alignment. And most of that happened in a cafe in Ferrara 5 years ago at PloneConf. And the problem is Quave has a per seat pricing model. Yeah, IMEO has a per size of the municipality pricing model, and we found a compromise. Let's just share revenue and make business together. With that out of the way, we could sign contracts, and I thought we could start. And I got a contract, and then nothing happened. And I'm like, why doesn't anything happen? Well, we had COVID, but we could just call Zoom, but those Zoom calls didn't happen either. And then my wife said, you should go and visit those people. And actually, that was the breakthrough. Because that's what's needed. Like, I need to be there on site every 6 to 8 weeks. And it's just a 1-hour drive, but it crosses a country border, it crosses a language border, it crosses a culture border. And this is part of the culture there that, the most significant work we do is having lunch together and connecting on the human level. With that out of the way, we could do the technology, and I'm going to do this really fast. We have a deployment platform that's based on NixOS and Varnish and Ansible. At IMEO, they're using Docker, which is a completely different paradigm. Instead of having a single virtual private server that runs all your services, you need to containerize every service, and then you need to make the networks work in such a way that you can run multiple sites on a single server. That was very difficult, and I'll skip over the details. The outcome is that this Docker stuff works really well. So we use a single virtual server per client, and on the same, on the equivalent hardware, IMEO is able to serve 8 clients, 8 sites. So that's an 800% efficiency gain, which is quite stunning. And the thing that makes this work is that it's all open source, which makes it possible for us to collaborate in the first place. Quave adoption in Belgium is growing. It's growing slowly, but that fits the culture. You have to make connections and you have to gain trust. But then the ground is already prepared because IMEO already has all these clients and they are already talking to them. So I guess we can scale up Quave slowly there. I created a French language website to support that. And let me just summarize why I'm making a big deal of this case study. In the free software community, we like to debate software is not just free as in beer, it's also free as in freedom. And it's actually more important that it's free as in freedom. But if you think about that, the actual really important part is the community dynamics that freedom makes possible. And the IMEO case shows how this can power a whole ecosystem. IMEO doesn't call its clients clients, they call them communes, communities. So it's really deep into their DNA. So Emio connects all these communes and makes synergy between them. Emio then also connects them with the Plone ecosystem and makes synergies with us as an ecosystem as well. I will not repeat those core values. Just want to reiterate that these values, they align with a emergent approach to change. They mean that small changes that we make may have a big impact. So even when the world is dark and we see all the systems arrayed against us, change is possible. So this is how we resist monopoly capitalism, by tuning into the local scale, by pushing change commit by commit, by building trust one connection at a time, by keeping the flame alive. Because the butterfly effect is more powerful than we ever imagined. You and you and you can be the butterfly. We as a community can be that butterfly. We can make a difference that matters as a community. That's it. Do we have time for questions?
Yes, of course. Oh, I'm sorry, it's really loud. So thanks, Guido, by the talk. Anyone have any questions? No, no one. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Do you see we or someone using Quave to empower like indigenous people, like empower and connect indigenous people, like all communities in Brazil from several places where there are resistance, but they are forgotten. So, do you see we using this to connect them?
I think we don't do that currently, but I think it's certainly possible. So let's talk about that. We do have a client that is close to that with Clean Clothes, who are connecting all kinds of people all over the world. Also, disadvantaged communities are using it that way. Yeah, but let's talk.
So, anyone more questions? Alguém mais perguntas? Nobody? Okay, thanks everyone. Round of applause, please.